I'm Sarah Mulligan Williams, and this is Creatives Processing. I'm the creative director behind Word of Mouth, my studio partnering with small businesses and nonprofits on creative strategy, brand identity, and content production. I also curate Comedy 101, a live film series where I put foundational comedy films in front of an audience and talk about what makes them work. And now, this podcast. Three pretty different things on the surface, but they're really all the same thing to me: an excuse to celebrate the craft behind something and ask how it got made. That question, how did that get made? And what did it actually take? Is what drives everything I do. So creatives processing is me pointing that question at the people I most want to learn from. Working creatives, people who make art for a living and have figured out a few things along the way. The podcast does for creatives what word of mouth does for my clients. Helps make sure the world can see the work. They've got the mission. My job is to make sure the world can see it. Every episode, I get to shine a light on someone doing genuinely meaningful creative work. Their process, their challenges, and what it really takes to do this kind of work well. Whether you're deep in a creative career, just starting out, or someone who works alongside creatives and wants to understand those wild, weird, wonderfully sensitive brains, this show is for you. This is Creatives Processing, where creatives reveal their process and process what it means to create. In this highlights episode, I'm pulling 3 moments from my conversation with Mona Shomali, climate fiction author, visual artist, and director of a youth environmental leadership program. Mona spent years as a professor of international relations in New York, teaching courses on Indigenous human rights, resource conflicts, and environmental governance. She knew this material cold. What she had to figure out was how to write a book that people actually wanted to read. The first version of that book was nonfiction, all rigorously researched, academically solid, and, as Mona herself will tell you, absolutely unreadable. So she scrapped it and rewrote everything as a novel, Water Mamas. Then she got rejected 180 times. And then she built her own publishing operation from scratch. That's the journey we're starting with. From there, we'll get into what Mona's youth program has taught her about keeping creative possibility alive. And then into something that's been stuck in my head since we talked: what technology is doing to human connection and what we lose creatively when we stop showing up in our bodies. Between segments, I'll share what these moments bring up for me. But before we get into it, if you haven't already, please follow or subscribe to Creatives Processing wherever you're listening or watching right now. It's the best way to make sure you never miss an episode, and it genuinely helps the show reach more people. You can also follow at Creatives Processing on Instagram, which is where I share new episodes first. And if you're in the Bay Area, I'm hosting a Comedy 101 screening at the new Parkway in Oakland on April 21st and at the Roxy Theater in San Francisco on April 23rd. We're watching Shaun of the Dead, and I'll be diving into what makes Edgar Wright one of the most visually inventive comedy directors working today. Ticket link is in the show notes. Alrighty, here's my conversation with Mona Shomali. And this was nonfiction when you started off, correct?
The nonfiction version was a really fucking boring series.
Tell me about how fucking boring it was.
It was chapters and chapters of agreements that protected Indigenous people. The Organization of American States, the Declaration of Man, the UN Covenant on Civil Rights. Just like, I was basically making the case. And I wasn't just making the case about Indigenous people. I had intended it to be a primer for people who wanted to get into ecology, social justice. I had so many essays, and they were all factual, and they all read like just, little, textbook chapters.
Yeah.
But with the nonfiction book, I was getting feedback from my friends, girl, we cannot fucking read this. This is like too much,
were you like so involved in like the academic world at that point that it's like, well, obviously this is what I would write to because this is the type of paper, the type of essay that I was already writing, but then not thinking about like, how does this reach audiences outside of academia?
That's a really, like, if you want to put it in one nutshell, the first book was academic.
Yeah. What changed it? Was it in the conversations with friends and collaborators?
I just thought to myself, what if I could make a really fun, interesting book that has like an arc of story and narrative and exciting pieces? And what if I can just shovel this nonfiction stuff in the book so as they're reading it, they're learning? Because that's the number one thing people say to me after I read read my book. They say I learned a lot. So I was really able to use my creative mind, merge my creative mind with my academic mind.
So 180 rejections.
No, no's, 180 no's. I felt like shit. It really hit my self-esteem. It really hit my sense of self. I could not call myself an author at all. I would call myself a writer because I felt I had not been traditionally published. I had no one interested in traditionally publishing me, and so I just couldn't call myself an author. I felt I hadn't been invited into that club. And then I met with a business coach who said to me, within 1 hour, you'll be calling yourself an author. And I was like, this lady. And she was right. After an hour, I called myself an author. So I think I just needed some coaching. I needed some coaching to reframe a lot of these ideas of, like, when an official club turns you down, like, can you still be the thing you would have been if you were in the club?
Bringing April in was what made self-publishing possible, right?
Well, it was her idea to
It was her idea.
self-publish. But she basically said, let's publish on KDP, Amazon, and on Ingram Spark. And she's such a genius for doing this because Amazon gave us a great deal, really fast, really easy to work with, print on demand. But Ingram Spark, publishing with them meant that we had access to the Ingram Spark catalog, which is where all booksellers buy their books.
Yeah.
As soon as it went live on Ingram Spark, I saw that Barnes and Noble picked it up. I saw that Strand in New York picked it up and were advertising it. I saw a whole bunch of small independent booksellers all over picking it up. And then I heard from friends they would go to independent bookstores and ask for the book, and then that independent bookseller would buy it from the Ingram Spark catalog. So you can request it at any small bookstore now because it's in the Ingram Spark catalog.
What Mona's story drives home for me is just how many options and resources exist in self-publishing now. The Ingram Spark piece in particular. The fact that getting into that catalog means independent booksellers across the country can just pick up your book, that Barnes & Noble and the Strand can list it without a single traditional publishing deal. That's real infrastructure. That's not a workaround. Don't let gatekeeping or rejection be the thing that stops you from doing it yourself. What stayed with me most, though, is the moment where she said she couldn't call herself an author. She could say writer, sure, but not author, because she hadn't been invited into that club yet. And what it took to flip that wasn't more rejections or more time. It was one conversation with the right person that helped her reframe the whole thing. We quietly make these agreements with ourselves. I'm the real thing once X happens. And until then, I'm something slightly less. Sometimes all it takes is the right outside perspective, be it a coach, a mentor, a trusted peer, to help you see yourself more clearly. And then she built a team around the work itself. Her editor, her book designer who said, I'll be your creative partner in this. The best creative work tends to happen inside of a circle of collaborators who are genuinely invested in each other, where the feedback is honest because the relationship is safe. That's exactly what Mona built. And it's what got Water Mamas into the world. Here's what I want you to sit with. Who are the people in your corner? Or who could you bring into your corner who will give you honest feedback because the relationship is safe enough for it? And if you're sitting on a book manuscript and wondering if self-publishing is the right move, let's talk. I've helped first-time authors navigate this before. Check the show notes for a link to that work. Up next, Mona on why dreaming has to come before doing and what her youth program has taught her about keeping that alive. You're working with youth in that like 16 to 22 range. What do you want them to understand about creativity as a tool for change?
I think creativity always has to be the first step. I really do. It has to be the lens with which you start, and just imagine of all the different scenarios and modalities of what's possible, start there. Because I think if you start with what has been done before, you're already being limited. If you start with other people's opinions, you're being limited. I think it's really just dreaming. I think dreaming needs to be the first step of any big thing you take on, is to dream. I'm permanently suspended in a state of what is possible, because these youth are always, bringing forth ideas before they've gotten to the place where reality shuts them down. So we're living in a constant space of what if, because they all come into my program with projects and ideas. A lot of adults would look at them and be like, that's not feasible. That's not manageable. That's not logistical. That's not, and we're like, you know what? We don't
Yeah.
care. We're here just to build up this project. And if it seems out there, if it seems not possible, we're still going to work on it. And I think, we're just, before dreams die, we're working with youth and trying to push that out as far as we can, and just, suspend ourselves in a state of what is possible. It's good for my creativity.
Permanently suspended in a state of what is possible. That phrase has truly not left me. There's something Mona said that I think gets at a real tension in creative work. If you start with what has been done before, you're already being limited. The practical brain, the one that's thinking about scope and feasibility and what's been done before, has its place. But when it shows up before the creative brain has had its moment, you've already narrowed the field before the game has even started. And here's the thing about that dreaming window. It's not as fragile as we tend to think. There's this common fear that if you don't protect it perfectly, it's gone and it's gone forever. That kind of thinking can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. You never fully open the window because you're already bracing for it to close. But you can return to the what if at any point in a project. It takes more deliberate effort later, sure, but it's not a one-time opportunity. Don't let the fear of losing it be the thing that shuts it down prematurely. What Mona's youth program does is make the what if the whole point. She works with people who haven't yet reached the place where reality shuts them down. Many adults would look at their projects and say, not feasible, not manageable. But she says, we don't care about that. We're here to build up the idea. There's something so powerful about being in that room intergenerationally, around people at a different life stage with a different relationship to what's possible. It changes you. It changed her. I also love that she shows her work in progress paintings to friends and trusted eyes. I was actually shocked at that. But it's the same instinct, holding space for the work before it's finished, before it's ready to be evaluated, in the presence of people who are safe to be unfinished around. That's not just a nice habit, that's a legit creative practice. Question for you. When was the last time you let an idea exist before you judged it? And who are the people in your life that you could be unfinished around? The last highlight is the one that has stayed with me the most. Mona on what technology is doing to human connection and what we're quietly losing.
I've been following a lot of different philosophers and thinkers and researchers talk about the effect of AI on Gen Z. One small thing they said that really hit me was they said, nowadays, if you go to a club, no one dances. And the woman said, why don't people dance? And the guy said, because everyone's being recorded and no one wants to be recorded dancing. And when I heard that, my heart broke, because I was like, people are going to stop doing stuff because they don't want to be recorded. In my youth program, we tried to do phoneless activities. And you may be asking, what's a phoneless activity? Kayaking. You can't bring your phone into the kayak. Nope. It'll get wet. Ropes courses. You can't have your phone on you. It'll fall off a tree. So we try to do phoneless activities, and we're basically mimicking life in the forest, because kayaking is what you would do to catch fish, right? And so you're not going to have your phone in the boat while you're fishing, because it'll get wet. So it's like, I think about these little parallels, that we're basically doing these activities outdoors that have a true function in other societies. In like indigenous cultures, not all of them, but some of them that I visited, is that the day and night is when everyone's all together sleeping in a circular structure. Everyone's together. And then during the day, everyone separates and goes out in either sets of ones or twos or threes, or ones. And then everyone comes home and sleeps together. Mm-hmm. And in the US, we sleep alone, and then we go out to work in the office where there's hundreds of people, and then we go back alone to home. 70% of teenage boys have never approached a girl, and they say they never will. The majority of them are addicted to synthetic porn, not even real porn, robot porn. They don't leave the house, all these things because of, the synthetic porn is definitely AI. The number one use of AI right now is companionship. Something like 17% of youth have, boyfriends or girlfriends on AI. So I think there's a lot of isolation because of AI in the Western world that I don't think is going to hit Amazonian cultures as hard.
The image of no one dancing because they don't want to be recorded, I haven't stopped thinking about it. It's not really about clubs or phones. It's about what happens when the fear of being seen imperfectly makes you stop doing things altogether. That makes me so goddamn sad. Because it's a creativity problem. Yeah, creative work requires the exact opposite of that. The willingness to be in the messy middle, to try something before you know if it works, to be bad at something on the way to getting good at it. But it's also a humanity problem. We're becoming too afraid to just be human, to be witnessed being unpolished, unscripted, in process. If you only show up when you can control how you look, you lose both. The creative output and the lived experience of being present in your own life. The phoneless activities Mona runs, she frames them as mimicking life in the Amazon. Activities with a true function in other societies, where your phone literally can't come. What she's recreating is the conditions for full presence. And full presence is where learning happens, where risk happens, where real connection happens. Her observation about indigenous community structures, together at night, separated by function during the day, then together again in the evening, and how that inverts the Western model of isolated at home, crowded at work, isolated again, it really stopped me. We've organized our lives so that solitude is private and togetherness is transactional. And I wonder what that does to creativity. Whether it reinforces this idea that good work happens alone, at a desk, in your head, when actually some of the most valuable creative thinking happens in conversation, in community, across generations, in the in-between. That's what this podcast is about. Not just the outputs creatives make, but the conditions that make the work possible. The conversations, the relationships, the environments where people feel safe enough to think out loud. That's not soft. That's the whole thing. So here's my last question for you. Where have you stopped showing up fully because of what it might look like? What would it cost you? And what might you gain if you just did the damn thing anyway? I'm so inspired by Mona, by her commitment to herself and to her team, to indigenous cultures and to climate, and especially to the young people in her program. She could have stayed in academia and kept writing for an audience of specialists. Instead, she figured out how to tell the story in a way that could actually reach people. And then she built the whole operation to get it there. That kind of commitment across that many fronts, over that many years, through that many no's, that's not hustle culture. That's integrity. That's someone who genuinely believes the work matters and acts accordingly. If this episode resonated with you, the full conversation with Mona is available now. We go so much deeper into her writing process, her visual art practice, the book itself, and a whole lot more. You can find it wherever you're listening to this. To learn about and purchase Water Mamas or subscribe to Mona's Substack, check the show notes. Thanks for listening to my conversation with Mona Shomali. Check the show notes for links to her novel Water Mamas, a novel of climate, spirituality, and indigenous human rights, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, or if you'd rather support a local bookstore, you can request it there too, since it's in the Ingram Spark catalog. Also in the show notes, her Substack, where she writes on climate, Indigenous rights, and more. It's a great follow. The latest Creatives Processing mixtape is out now. I put these together every month, a playlist of music I'm listening to and loving. You'll find the link in the show notes too. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love it if you shared it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you haven't yet, leave a rating wherever you're listening. It legit makes a difference. Be a kind friend and help me grow this podcast. You can find me and my creative studio Word of Mouth at wordofmouthcreative.co. If you're a brand or organization looking for a creative partner, someone who leads with strategy, storytelling, and a real human point of view, that's what I do. Come say hi. This episode was produced by Word of Mouth, edited by Kai Endemar, and our theme music is by John Michael Rochelle. Till next time, thanks for listening to Creatives Processing.